President Trump's trade war not inspiring a jobs boom. In fact, it seems to be doing the opposite.
The biggest loser is going to be the American auto sector, American auto workers, and American customers.
The United States entered 2025 with a promise from Washington that tariffs would bring back jobs. Factories were supposed to hum, construction sites were supposed to expand, and blue-collar workers were told to expect new opportunities. Instead, the most recent job report paints a sobering picture. The industries most directly exposed to tariffs are the ones feeling the sharpest pain. Mining and logging lost 6,000 jobs in August. Construction cut another 7,000. Manufacturing and wholesale trade each shed 12,000 positions. What was billed as a manufacturing renaissance is turning into a period of layoffs and stalled hiring. This broad weakness becomes even clearer when we look at the auto sector. Stellantis, the maker of Jeep, Dodge, and Chrysler, has become a case study in how tariffs ripple through supply chains and affect entire communities.
With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again, greater than ever before.
The idea behind tariffs was simple: make imports costly, bring production home. In reality, when steel, aluminum, and copper face rates as high as 50%, producing inside the United States also gets more expensive. Many companies respond by freezing hiring or cutting jobs. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas found that only 4% of manufacturers reported any benefit from tariffs, while 72% said the impact was negative. The New York Federal Reserve reported that in August, workers saw just a 45% chance of finding a new job if they lost their current one, the lowest since 2013. Instead of sparking growth, tariffs have created hesitation, and that hesitation shows up most clearly in autos.
Experts say bottom line is over the next 3 years, tariffs mean a reduction in car sales and a reduction in jobs. The unknown right now is just how hard the big three and Michigan overall are going to get hit in the process.
Stellantis has faced mounting challenges in 2025. The company reported losses of roughly $2.5 to $2.7 billion in the first half of the year. It also warned that tariffs could add about $1.7 billion in costs by the end of 2025. Production pauses hit multiple facilities. In Canada, Brampton and Windsor saw temporary shutdowns. In Mexico, the Toluca plant slowed output. In the United States, ripple effects spread quickly. Supplier plants tied to Stellantis reported furloughs, and nearly 900 American workers faced temporary layoffs at 5 connected sites earlier this year. These disruptions went beyond assembly lines. Electricians, machinists, and logistics staff all saw their schedules cut back. Higher costs for metals made each vehicle more expensive to build, while tariffs on imported parts disrupted just-in-time delivery networks that the auto industry depends on. Canada, tied into the same North American system, also felt the strain. Ottawa moved quickly with a $5 billion Canadian relief fund and by delaying an electric vehicle mandate, steps meant to cushion automakers and preserve jobs. The White House maintains that the best is yet to come. Officials argue that time is needed for new plants to be built and for supply chains to shift. Yet patience is thin among workers who are already facing layoffs. The Supreme Court will hear a challenge to the president's tariff powers in November. A ruling could reshape the entire system. At the same time, the administration is preparing to enforce a 100% tariff on imported semiconductors, with exemptions for firms investing heavily in the United States. The outlook for jobs will depend on how these policies play out. For now, the pattern is clear. The promise of a jobs boom has given way to weak hiring, rising unemployment, and case studies like Stellantis that show the strain in real time. Whether this slump is temporary or becomes the new normal will depend on choices made in Washington and how quickly relief arrives for the workers most exposed.
Certainly sounds like Canada-U.S. trade talks are in a holding pattern. That is after President Donald Trump raised tariffs on certain Canadian goods. Some of the country's premiers are calling for retaliation.
Taking the American alcohol off the shelves, looking at the procurement process, we have to push back for sure.
At midnight on August 1st, President Trump raised tariffs on Canadian goods not covered by USMCA from 25% to 35%. It was a dramatic move aimed at punishing Canada for refusing to sign a last-minute trade deal. Unlike South Korea or the EU, Canada stood its ground, insisting on a fair agreement instead of rushing under pressure. The tariff hit a small share of total exports but carried symbolic weight, signaling that even a close ally could be targeted. It marked a shift from cooperation to confrontation, straining a trade relationship long seen as one of the most stable in the world.
Canada is strong. We can give ourselves far more than anyone can take away. Building sustainably, building together, building positively, and that's what we're going to do. And yes, we'll come to something with the Americans.
But Canada didn't respond with noise. There were no podium outbursts, no rushed retaliatory tariffs. What followed was calm, measured, and quietly firm. Ordinary Canadians voiced frustration but not fear. They've seen this before. During Trump's first term, retaliatory bans on U.S. products, like removing American whiskey from shelves, caused real political ripples south of the border. That memory remains. Today, many Canadians favor long-term resilience over tit-for-tat escalation. The broader public mood in Canada has shifted. People are exhausted by cycles of unpredictability and power plays. Trump's approach is seen not as diplomacy but as theater. And Canada this time is choosing not to be part of the show. Prime Minister Mark Carney did not sign a last-minute deal like South Korea or the European Union. He made clear that Canada wouldn't accept a template agreement that didn't serve national interests. In public remarks, Carney emphasized sustainability and national self-confidence. He acknowledged the complexity of negotiations, but did not waver. His strategy is deliberate: avoid a bad deal, wait out the noise, and protect long-term national leverage. Trump expected submission. What he got was defiance, delivered without spectacle.
And when you blow up a relationship as important to that process as the U.S.-Canada relationship, there are consequences.
In fact, a few days ago, it was reported that Canada and Mexico are working on a, quote, Northern Corridor agreement to create easier trade between Mexico and Canada without involving the United States.
Economists quickly noted most of Canada's exports to the U.S., about 95%, remain protected under the USMCA. Only a small share is affected by the new tariff. But that small share carries symbolic weight, especially in provinces like Ontario, where politically sensitive sectors like steel and automotive are centered. Former U.S. Ambassador to Canada, David Cohen, publicly warned that these moves are eroding trust. For decades, the U.S.-Canada relationship stood out globally for its stability. Defense, intelligence, and cultural ties went hand in hand with trade. But that trust, painstakingly rebuilt during the Biden administration, has now taken another hit. And behind the scenes, Canada and Mexico are accelerating plans for a $120 billion Northern Corridor trade route, bypassing the U.S. entirely. It's a quiet signal that some allies are preparing for a future with less American reliability. Trump's team pointed to a 3% GDP increase in Q2 as proof of strength. But economists, including those cited by Commerce Department briefings, explained the rise was mostly a technical bounce, driven by a sharp drop in imports after businesses rushed to stockpile ahead of tariff deadlines. In April, Trump had claimed to have made 200 trade deals. By August 1st, the actual number was closer to 8. Canada, notably, wasn't one of them. Trump's strategy is to appear strong, but with every tariff that alienates a key partner, the U.S. risks standing more alone, isolated from the very allies it once relied on. Canada isn't just holding firm. It's quietly walking away from the pressure and keeping its options open.
We're going to be putting a very large tariff on chips and semiconductors. If you're building in the United States or have committed to build, without question committed to build in the United States, there will be no charge.
In the days after August 1st, the trade battle between Washington and its key partners took an unexpected turn. President Donald Trump pushed forward with one of his most aggressive proposals yet: a 100% tariff on imported computer chips and semiconductors. His message was blunt: build in the United States or pay double. This was more than a new trade policy. It was a move that sent tremors through global supply chains, rattled the markets, and left allies like Canada watching closely. Chips aren't just inside laptops. They're in cars, refrigerators, and the everyday devices people rely on. A shock at the source means higher prices across the board.
President Trump and Apple CEO Tim Cook just announced a new $100 billion commitment to manufacturing in the U.S.
The reality is that Apple invests billions per year already in the U.S., right?
And while Cook didn't announce the Made in USA iPhone that Trump maybe wanted, he did flatter Trump by giving him a customized plaque with a 24-karat gold base, of course.
Trump staged the chip tariff rollout with Apple's $100 billion U.S. investment as the showcase, while pressuring Intel's CEO and signaling that political alignment mattered as much as business. Many such investments were already planned, making the tariff more a political bargaining chip than a genuine industrial policy. On paper, the plan was about bringing money and jobs back to America. In practice, the economics tell a more complicated story. Independent studies, including the Yale Budget Lab's August 2025 review, estimate that tariffs implemented this year could raise household costs by $2,200 to $3,800 annually. That's because tariffs don't stay on corporate balance sheets. They show up in the final price tag for consumers. And while Trump points to corporate investments as proof of success, many of these projects predate the tariff. Apple's $100 billion pledge, Samsung's Arizona expansion, TSMC's multi-billion-dollar fabs, all were in motion thanks to the 2022 CHIPS Act and the AI-driven race for capacity. The tariff may have reinforced these moves, but it didn't create them. There's also the jobs question. Modern semiconductor fabrication is highly automated. Even with new facilities, the number of direct manufacturing jobs created is limited, and the work often requires specialized skills, narrowing the employment impact. In reality, most of these investments were already planned for strategic and technological reasons, with the tariff acting more as a political lever than the true catalyst.
John, these sound like bully tariffs. Auto, for example. Kiss the ring or face the tariff seems to be the message.
Yeah, bring a 24-karat gold plaque to the White House, or the tariff story could go on. And obviously that's a complicated story for companies and countries like Canada as well.
For Canada, the chip tariff was another reminder that Trump's trade pressure can target any sector. Prime Minister Mark Carney's response has been deliberate. Maintain the backbone of the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, which still keeps about 85% of Canadian exports tariff-free while refusing to rush into any bad deal. Ottawa has rolled out a $1.2 billion Canadian dollars support package for industries already hit by the August 1st increase on non-customer goods, shielding sectors like softwood lumber from immediate damage. On technology, Canada is deepening partnerships outside the US, while staying embedded in North America's semiconductor supply chain. This dual track reduces risk if the US imposes the full 100% chip tariff without broad exemptions. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has warned that Trump could move to reopen CUSMA early, but Canada's united stance has been to prepare, not panic. The strategy is to engage on favorable terms, not from a position of weakness.
Hit that guy back as hard as we possibly can, and that's what we need to do. And we can do it. We can build anything here in Canada, absolutely anything.
The 100% chip tariff is more than an economic measure. It's a negotiating tactic, a show of force, and a test of loyalty. But it also carries the risk of higher consumer prices, distorted investment incentives, and unresolved technological gaps. Trump has made himself the central actor in this drama, but Canada has not been cast as a passive player. Under Carney's watch, the country is protecting its industries, diversifying its alliances, and holding its ground in trade talks. The fight over chips is just one front in a broader contest of leverage. And in that contest, endurance, not speed, will decide who comes out ahead.